Welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, October 2nd, 2023, and today starts the first trial for President Donald Trump in the state of New York, starting with this $250 million lawsuit brought forth by the New York State Attorney General. Now, the state of New York trial is the first of four that we will expect to see President Donald Trump undergo ahead of the 2024 presidential election. A trial that will indicate the direction at which many of these will go in cases of the former president, some existing in the state of Georgia, some existing in the District of Columbia, and of course, this one occurring in the state of New York. Now, President Donald Trump in this fraud case here is already in the courtroom. This morning, he arrived and immediately declared that this was a fraud case, or his case was a scam, that this was a political witch hunt in an effort to get out Donald Trump from the presidential bid. And it is a very, very common story that we have seen from Donald Trump, that in situations where he is pretty much up against the wall, being attacked from all sides, he tries to build this idea that there is someone out there to get him in the justice system, in the FBI, in the Department of Justice, whoever it might be. He blames the next person as a result of, some of the actions that he has taken. And I say this to preface that a lot of this video will be around the way that he is spinning this narrative, the way he is going to frame this to the American public, because we have never had a former United States president or sitting U.S. president in a situation such as this, where they have four federal indictments. They have numerous trials for a variety of things surrounding election integrity, surrounding fraud, a lot of things that dealt with his prior term as a businessman, the way he has used his presidential powers with confidential documents, so many different things that put us in a unique situation where we truly have never seen anything like this in American history. So with that in mind, we know that there isn't any type of standard conventional reaction to this amongst the electorate. We always look back at the 2020 election for insight as to how future elections might go. We look at Senate elections too. We're going in and out of the competitive races, talking about the battleground states. But we do not have any type of indication that, there is some type of electoral response from history. But polling suggests otherwise. We'll dive a little bit deeper into those polls later on in the video. I think they provide a very fascinating look at what we could expect in terms of an electoral reaction should Donald Trump find himself convicted by a jury in a case outside of the state of New York. I'm not entirely convinced that this fraud case will be the one that does him in, but I do think it matters. I absolutely think a lot of this matters, and the way that he treats this, the way that he talks about this case, the way it is spun by the New York Attorney General, spun by the judge, spun by Donald Trump himself, these are things that matter, and they can certainly give us a general indication. Does the American public buy Donald Trump's story that this is a political witch hunt? Do they buy that the New York Attorney General should not be going after him? Because if they do, it could really change the election not too much, right? We could really see him come out on top in some instances if he is able to actually convey to the American public and convince them that he is the subject of a political witch hunt, because that has been done before. When President Bill Clinton used it back in 1998, it worked successfully, and Democrats did quite well in those midterm elections. So sometimes it can work out, but right now we aren't seeing much indication. Again, later down the line, I will show you the polls that seem to suggest that they are buying into this story, but it certainly is the way that it looks like he's going to go. So generally speaking, Donald Trump being in this situation is not a good thing. I think what we can take away from this is that he is willing to appear in court. I mean, kind of has to. But on top of that, too, that he doesn't like losing. And he doesn't like being pulled away from the narrative here. I think what we have seen with this preempting of the sit down in the courtroom is that he's already trying to put in distrust into this New York trial, as makes sense, right? He is the subject of the trial. He is the one they are saying, you committed fraud. Right? You stole classified documents. You tried to overturn the election in Georgia. All of these things are going on the offense of Donald Trump. This isn't some type of standard political debate. This is not an issue of where you stand, pro-life, pro-choice, small government, big government. This is about criminal charges. This is about labeling the former president as a criminal. And the question is, did he actually do it? The question is, do they find him guilty? And I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not in law school. I don't have any type of legal basis to tell you how this case is going to go. But I can certainly tell you how it will be received. And it doesn't help that this isn't just one situation. He has 4 indictments nationwide. These things surrounding when he's going to be appearing in court. I mean, the day before Super Tuesday, Donald Trump will be in court. Or sorry, the day of Super Tuesday in 2024 on the GOP side. So that matters, right? That's when people are going to vote in the polls, and they're going to say the president I want to win the nomination is in the courtroom today and might actually be thrown in jail before the 2024 election. Those are things people now have to consider that were never in the equation under any past presidential election. These are things that we do not have a historical response to compare it to, and that's why it makes it so interesting. So what I see on the GOP side, too, with these 4 indictments is that they have already started to try and build this idea that the New York case is, wrong, that the New York case is going against Donald Trump, that it's a political witch hunt, whatever it might be. They're trying to tie the Democratic Party to the New York State Attorney General, and it makes sense, right? There is a very clear association between the two, but this is around hush money. This is, again, one of the lower consequent cases. A lot of it surrounds money. A lot of it surrounds, where Donald Trump, what he did, fraud. It's not necessarily about anything as extreme as exciting an insurrection or classified documents or overturning an election. So putting all those to the side, this obviously is still a very bad thing. If it ends up being proven to be true of Donald Trump, he could still have some electoral repercussion, but I think this is the first of many cases that will build the perfect storm to allow for a President Joe Biden election yet again. I think that's what is the end takeaway here as well, and that will be constantly reaffirmed throughout the video, that Joe Biden is the only one who benefits from this. The Democratic Party is the party that benefits from this. While Donald Trump might see a minor bump when it comes down to the GOP nomination, might see a minor bump when it comes down to the betting odds, might see a minor bump when it comes down to fundraising metrics, I do not think it does him any favors, quite frankly, in the general election. And I think he knows that. And I think there's a reason why he's already starting to push back on it. He's using it as a fundraising method, but that can only go so far because it doesn't mean everything. So we have those state indictment on business fraud charges in the state of New York. The next one we're going to talk about, too, the federal indictment on classified documents. Again, a lower stakes type of case, but still important about election security for someone who railed against Hillary Clinton back in 2016. This is certainly not a good look. Then you have the 2020 election interference case. And then you have a state indictment from the state of Georgia. And the interesting thing about this one is that while, he's not going to go to jail for New York, the things that are happening with classified documents in Florida is federal. The things that are happening with the 2020 election is federal for the interference in the election and also being tried in Washington, D.C. But in the state of Georgia, this is a state indictment, which means he cannot pardon himself should they find him guilty, should they throw him in jail. I mean, these are things that are so serious because he has no way out of this. There is no way to get himself pardoned in the state of Georgia, especially when you have on record that he's asking Brad Raffensperger to find 11,780 votes. I mean, the case has built itself. They would not have put forth these 4 indictments without reasonable concern. And I think there is a very arguable case across all of them that I think they are going to make that case. But again, I don't know what the verdict's going to be. I can only talk about what the reaction might be from the American public. And to preface, before we get into this as well, I want to show you the exit polling data from the 2020 presidential. And you can see here that among self-identified Democrats and Republicans, the split was roughly the same, just on opposing sides. That makes sense. But amongst independents, Joe Biden won them, 26% roughly of the electorate, 54-41. Why am I hyperfixating on independents? Well, number one, they dictate how this country goes, right? They are the nearly most important voting bloc besides the core bases that need to turn out for both sides of the aisle. So independents matter so much to Democrats, so much to Republicans. But here's the interesting thing. According to 2 polls, one in specific, we have WPI Intelligence. They are a Republican-leaning pollster. They find that in the general election right now, Biden leads Trump by just 2%. But then they ask voters, if Donald Trump is convicted by a jury, convicted by a judge, convicted in the justice system, how would you react in that poll? How would you react in that head-to-head matchup? What happens is Joe Biden goes from a 2-point lead to a 6-point lead. Keep in mind how close elections have gotten in recent times. Every percentage matters. Every vote matters. And if Joe Biden is going from +2 to +6, that's a huge red flag for the Republican Party because it means there is an impact. But it wasn't just them. You might think, okay, maybe that was just a fluke poll. We also have a poll here as well, one that asks specifically amongst independents and Republicans and the American public, would you vote for Trump is if he is convicted of a felony crime by a jury. That means something like in the state of Georgia, something like in Washington, D.C. What is the reaction? You have 26% that say yes, they would still vote for him. 57% of the public says no. 57% of the American public, according to this poll, says no. Independents, 57% say no. Just 19% say yes. Even Republicans, 52% say yes, but 29% say no. I think the American public, as any reasonable political analysis could tell you, have a problem with voting for someone that they deem to be a criminal. Even if they don't necessarily believe that the motivations were the purest in pursuing Donald Trump, it is clear here that people are entertaining the possibility that Donald Trump is convicted of a felony, is convicted of a crime. And in that hypothetical situation, if they were asked to vote, would they vote for him? And the answer is no. Now, Joe Biden's numbers don't seem to be getting tremendously better in this situation, but it's about decreased enthusiasm on the Republican side that makes the difference. While 57% say no, likely meaning they would vote for Joe Biden on the national presidential, which is about a 3% increase, that dip from 41 to 19 is definitely really important. Because it shows that while a portion might be saying, I don't want Biden either, but they couldn't bring themselves to willingly vote for Donald Trump, they may just sit out of the election. And that is a good thing for Democrats if independents who would never vote for Biden were considering Trump, but now are not considering Trump, are now vacating themselves from this electorate, removing themselves from the fray, not making that decision consciously. That is a good thing for national Democrats, and I could very easily see how it boosts Joe Biden's numbers following said conviction. Now, Donald Trump has been doing quite well on the national metric, but that's because there's a considerable portion of the country that is also undecided. I think the fear around Donald Trump was lost after Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election, but could certainly be revitalized if he is convicted in any of these cases. I think some are lower stakes than others, but I don't imagine his chances are great in any of them. Like I said, to indict a former president not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times over 4 different instances, from state boundaries to national boundaries. These things make so much of a difference in the general election, and we just don't know truly how much this will sway voters just yet, but we do have preliminary data that suggests that this lead that Donald Trump has right now of 1.1% is going to be evaporated. You're talking what? A 4-point swing on the low end, a monumental swing on the high end. Other polls I've seen too, and unfortunately I didn't bring it up on the numbers, but you can find them on Real Clear Politics, show in some cases a 10-point swing. Even anything remotely bigger than a 1 to 2 point swing shows this has a substantial impact. Because even in the 2020 presidential election, where Joe Biden flipped Arizona since the first time since 96, Georgia for the first time since 92, won back the blue wall, locked down the Clinton states, Virginia, Colorado, New Mexico, won by double digits, the election was still close. Joe Biden only won by 4.5%, and that shows that elections get narrower. They get close. Even in afterwards, we were saying Democrats won back control of the House, won back control of the Senate, won control of the White House. The first Democratic trifecta since 2008. Democrats lost all 3 chambers, or all 3 House and the 2 chambers of Congress in 2016 and won both of them back and the White House in 2020. I mean, it was a complete and total reversal of 2016, even down to the numbers. But yet, that popular vote margin, and especially that swing state margin, Wisconsin, Arizona, Georgia, all states won by less than 1%. Any movement against Donald Trump does make all the difference. A lot of these states and down ballot races will be decided by the narrowest of margins. And if Donald Trump has lost any support because of these cases, which it looks like he very well may, there will be significant repercussions for the Republican Party. And part of me thinks they know that. I don't know exactly why there is still this infatuation around Donald Trump, because I do not believe him to be the most electable Republican. But I am not advising the RNC. I'm not here to serve as the spokesperson for the GOP, but I am here to analyze elections. I am here to see what will be the impact of these cases. And as Donald Trump sits today for the first time for many days in a courtroom surrounding his, proceedings, surrounding his actions and the consequences of such actions, we will see just how much this impacts the electorate in due time. But right now, the numbers don't seem to suggest that there's any good news out of this, besides a slight bump amongst the GOP side, but a significant decrease in the general election for 2024. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.